The Rangers had given up hope. 5 rogue lions had taken over the reserve, attacking anything that moved. But just as things seemed impossible, a little girl walked into the clearing, and what the lions did next, no one could believe. The sun scorched the endless plains of the Maasai Reserve, painting the dry grass gold under a cloudless sky. For weeks now, something had felt off. Rangers whispered about unusual sightings, disturbed tracks, signs of aggression that didn't make sense. These lions, 5 of them, were not just hunting. They were circling camps, charging at patrol vehicles, testing fences. Rangers weren't just on alert, they were afraid. Samir, the reserve's lead ranger, had never known fear like this in his 12 years on duty. He had seen poachers, snake bites, injured elephants, but this was different. These lions weren't lashing out in defense. They were organized, deliberate, and worst of all, seemingly unafraid of humans. 2 weeks earlier, one of the patrols had been ambushed, not killed, but pinned. 3 rangers were trapped inside their flipped truck for hours before backup arrived. No one could explain why the lions didn't finish them off. That morning, Samir climbed into his vehicle with an unshakable tension in his chest. Today they were going to attempt something desperate, lure the lions toward the riverbed using tranquilizer bait. If successful, they could dart them and run tests to see what was driving this aggression. Illness? Injury? Something deeper? But they never made it to the river. Halfway through the ravine, the radio crackled, then a roar. A second later, the jeep behind them was under attack. Screams followed, metal crushing, glass shattering. Samir slammed the brakes. Dust exploded around them. He grabbed his tranq rifle, heart pounding, then stepped into the open. He saw nothing, just grass swaying in the dry wind. Then came the growl. From the ridge above, one by one, the lions emerged. 5 of them, all male, powerful, eyes fixed on the humans below. Samir raised his weapon, knowing it wouldn't matter. They were too many, too fast. One lion leapt first, others followed. Chaos exploded across the canyon. The rangers fired darts, but the lions scattered and regrouped like they were trained. No one could believe what was happening. This wasn't wild behavior. It was tactical. Samir yelled for backup, trying to rally his men, but one by one, they fell back. Some injured, some frozen in place. A younger ranger tripped and screamed as a lion pounced over him, but didn't bite. It just roared inches from his face before vanishing into the brush. This wasn't just dominance. It was a message, and then everything stopped. The lions gathered again at the ridge, not attacking, not retreating, just watching. The standoff stretched into unbearable silence, until something entirely unthinkable happened. A small figure walked into the clearing. A child. She was barefoot. Her hair was braided in 2 pigtails, maybe 6 years old. She held a small red cloth in her hand, waving it gently. Nobody knew where she came from. She just appeared. The rangers shouted for her to stop, to go back, to run. But she didn't flinch. The lead lion turned its massive head toward her. Then it did something that made even Samir drop his weapon. It sat down. The other lions followed. The child walked closer, as if in a trance. She stood barely a few feet from the largest lion now, her eyes locked on his. She held out the red cloth with trembling hands. The lion sniffed the air. Then, slowly, he lowered his head and nuzzled her palm. Not a sound was made in that moment. Not by the rangers. Not by the lions. Not even the wind. No one understood it, but they all felt it. Something ancient, something sacred. And this was only the beginning. No one moved, not even the lions. The moment hung like a breath no one dared to release. Samir stood frozen, his heart thudding in his ears, as he watched the little girl stand before a pride of rogue lions like she belonged. There. Not a single beast bared a tooth. Not a single paw shifted toward aggression. The girl's small hand remained outstretched, and in it, the red cloth fluttered gently with the wind. The lead lion sniffed again, almost reverently, then pressed his massive head into her hand like an offering. The other rangers didn't understand what they were seeing. Some had tears in their eyes. Others were shaking, too stunned to react. These were the same lions that had cornered their teams for weeks, that had shown military precision in their movements, that had terrified seasoned patrolmen, and yet here they were, tamed not by force, not by weapons, but by the silent presence of a barefoot child. Samir slowly lowered his tranq rifle. His voice caught in his throat when he tried to call out to her. Beta, he whispered, unsure why he even used the word. She didn't respond. Her gaze was locked on the lion, her expression unreadable, calm, yet intense. The way a child stares at something they remember but don't fully understand. Minutes passed before the girl turned around and looked straight at Samir. She pointed to the lion, then to her cloth, then brought her finger to her lips as if to say, "Shh." That was when something clicked in Samir's mind. That cloth, red, frayed at the edges. It looked familiar. Then the memory hit him like lightning. Nearly 4 years ago, there had been a fire in one of the southern villages near the edge of the reserve. A toddler had gone missing. They searched for days. No remains were ever found. Just a torn red cloth caught on a low tree branch near a lion path. His eyes widened. "It can't be," he murmured. The village had long given up hope. The family had moved away. But if this was the same child, could it be? And if so, where had she been all these years? The lions shifted, as if they felt the change in energy. The largest of them nudged the girl gently from behind, urging her forward. She walked slowly, and the lions parted, letting her pass. Samir took a cautious step forward, arms open and low, speaking softly. "Are you okay? Come here, sweetheart." But she didn't run. She walked slowly toward him like someone who hadn't heard a human voice in a very long time. She stopped just a few feet away, eyes wide but not afraid, her lips parted. "His name is Yarrow," she said. Her voice was soft, scratchy, like it hadn't been used in weeks, maybe years. "He saved me." Samir felt the air leave his lungs. Yarrow. That name meant fierce protector in the old Maasai language. It was a name given to warriors, not animals. "Who is he?" he asked gently. She turned and pointed to the lion, who was still watching them intently, the one who sings at night. "He found me in the fire, took me away." The rest of the rangers had gathered by now, slowly forming a semicircle around Samir and the girl, though none dared step too close to the lions. Samir knelt down. "Do you remember your name?" he asked. She nodded. "Asha." The name hit him hard. That was the name of the child from the fire. The child presumed dead, but she was here, alive, standing in front of him, guarded by wild lions who acted like family. One of the younger lions growled low, protective. Asha turned and whispered something that no one else could hear. The lions stopped immediately. There was only one explanation that made sense anymore. Somehow, impossibly, these lions had raised her. They had taken her in when the world had burned. Around her, they had become her protectors, her family. And now, for reasons no one could understand, they had brought her back. But as Samir looked into Asha's eyes, he saw something else, something deeper. She hadn't come back because she was lost. She had come back because the lions needed help. And whatever it was, they hadn't just chosen any ranger. They had chosen the one who had once promised to protect this land, no matter the cost. The question now was, would anyone believe him? And more importantly, was the danger that brought her here still out there? Because if 5 lions had risked everything to bring her across the savannah, what were they running from? The sky had turned a soft orange as dusk settled over the reserve, casting long shadows that danced between the acacia trees. Asha sat quietly on a log just outside the ranger station, a wool blanket wrapped around her thin shoulders. The lions had not left the perimeter. They lay just beyond the tall grass, eyes glowing like silent embers, watching every movement with quiet vigilance. Yarrow, the largest among them, sat closest, his massive body still as stone, but his ears alert, following every sound from inside the station. He was waiting. Inside, the air was thick with confusion and cautious awe. Samir stood near the radio, trying to reach Central Command. Static hissed back. No reply. He looked over at Asha, who sipped from a cup of warm milk, her gaze steady, as if she had lived 1,000 lifetimes between now and the fire that had taken her home. "You've been with them this whole time?" Samir asked, crouching to her level. "In the wild?" Asha nodded slowly. "They took care of me. Yarrow would bring food. The others watched while I slept." Her voice was fragile, but there was no fear in it. "I don't think they meant to find me. I think I was just there, and they didn't leave." Samir felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. He had heard stories, old tribal legends, about animals taking in lost children, about spirits that watched over the innocent. But this was real. The girl was real. The lions were still out there, calm but protective, behaving in a way that defied everything he knew about animal behavior. He glanced at Ranger Anita, who had been recording notes the entire time. Her eyes met his, full of disbelief and fascination. We need a vet team, DNA tests, behavioral experts. This could change everything we think we know, she whispered. But Samir wasn't thinking about headlines or scientific recognition. He was thinking about Asha, how she had survived, how these lions had raised her in a world where no one would have expected her to last a week, let alone years. And more importantly, he was thinking about why they had come back now. What? Did Jaro tell you, Asha? He asked gently. Why did you come here? Asha looked at the window where the lions rested in the distance. She hesitated, then said, There's a noise in the earth. They don't sleep at night anymore. Something is wrong. They brought me because they knew I could speak, that someone would listen to me. Samir's heart pounded. What kind of noise? Big machines, she whispered. Not like trucks. These dig. They break the land. It hurts them. Anita sat up straight. Illegal mining operations, she said. There were reports last year, but they disappeared before we got there. Samir stood up, running a hand through his hair. You think they're active again? That deep in the reserve? Anita nodded grimly. It's the only explanation that makes sense. Outside, Jaro stood, pacing slowly. Samir turned back to Asha. Can you take us there? Asha hesitated, then looked toward the door. He'll show us, but only if we promise not to hurt them. They're scared. Who? Samir asked, puzzled. She looked at him with ancient sadness in her eyes. The people hiding in the forest. They're not just digging, they're running. A cold silence fell in the room. This wasn't just about lions or land. Something much deeper was happening out there. Something the lions had seen. Something they couldn't stop on their own. Samir's decision was made. Get the jeep ready, he told the others, and bring the tranquilizer gear, just in case. We followed Jaro at first light. As the others prepared, Samir walked outside into the fading light. Jaro met his eyes, unblinking. Samir gave a slow nod. Lead us, he said. We'll listen now. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of ash and iron, the kind of scent that meant something was broken. But now, maybe, they had a chance to make it right. At first light, the convoy rolled quietly out of the ranger station, headlights off, engines humming low against the morning stillness. Asha sat between Samir and Anita in the lead jeep, wrapped in the same wool blanket from the night before. She clutched a small pouch tied with faded red string, something she had never let go of, even while she slept. Behind them, two more. Jeeps followed, filled with rangers, a vet assistant, and a wildlife tracker, but none of them were leading the way. That role belonged to Jaro. The massive lion moved ahead with regal certainty, occasionally glancing back as if to make sure the humans were still following. The others flanked him in a wide arc, occasionally disappearing into the brush and reappearing yards ahead. It wasn't a hunt, it was an escort. They traveled for miles across terrain that grew increasingly wild and broken. Gone were the familiar trails rangers used to patrol. These were lands untouched in years, densely packed trees, dry creek beds, and strange scars in the earth that didn't belong to any animal. After nearly 2 hours, Jaro stopped at the edge of a wide clearing. His ears twitched, his breath heavy. He let out a single grunt, low and guttural. Asha placed her hand on the dashboard and whispered, "We're here." Samir stepped out of the jeep slowly, signaling the others to stay put. Anita followed closely, her camera already in hand. They moved quietly to where Jaro stood, peering through the bushes. What they saw on the other side made them freeze. At the heart of the clearing stood several makeshift tents, half-collapsed shipping containers, and large industrial equipment, excavators, drills and generators, all of it hidden under camouflage netting. The ground had been violently ripped open in places, revealing deep, jagged cuts where minerals had been stripped from the earth. Dozens of empty chemical barrels lay discarded near a shallow creek, and near one of the containers, 2 small children played barefoot in the dust, their clothes torn, faces streaked with dirt. Samir's chest tightened. This wasn't just an illegal mining operation. It was a settlement. Women could be seen hanging laundry between trees. A man with a rifle stood guard near the center of camp. They weren't just workers. They were living here, hiding from something or someone. Anita's voice trembled. These people, they're not just mining. They're running from something. Jaro let out another soft growl. Samir turned to him. Is this what you wanted us to see? Asha knelt beside the lion, her hand resting gently on his paw. They came here because no one would find them. But the land is hurting. The lions knew they couldn't fight machines. But they remembered me. They knew someone would listen if they brought me back. Samir exhaled slowly, realizing the weight of it all. The lions weren't attacking out of rage or hunger. They were trying to stop something, to protect something, and the only voice they trusted was that of a child they once saved. A sudden noise snapped everyone's attention to the far side of the camp. A large truck was reversing toward a newly dug trench. A man shouted in a language Samir didn't understand, and a group of workers scrambled to cover up equipment with plastic sheets. They were getting ready to move. Something had tipped them off. "Back to the jeeps," Samir ordered. "We need to document everything. Report this immediately." But as they turned to leave, one of the younger rangers slipped on the embankment. His foot struck a rusted barrel, sending it clattering down the slope. The sound echoed like thunder. A moment later, voices shouted from the camp. The armed man pointed in their direction. Samir cursed under his breath. "We're made! Move!" Before anyone could take another step, a deafening roar tore through the air. Jaro charged out of the brush, his powerful form cutting through the clearing like a phantom. The other lions followed, spreading wide and fast, circling the camp with speed and fury. Chaos erupted. People screamed and scattered. The armed guard fired a shot into the air, but it did nothing. The lions didn't attack the people. They knocked over equipment, toppled tents, and growled with primal warning. "Itai" was a message. "Leave now." Samir grabbed Asha and pulled her back toward the jeep as the others followed. From the rearview mirror, he saw workers running into the trees, women clutching children, and the man with the rifle tossing his weapon to the ground before disappearing into the forest. Within minutes, the camp was abandoned. Jaro returned slowly, his chest heaving. His golden eyes met Samir's one last time, not as a threat, not even as an ally, but as something deeper, a guardian. Back at the station hours later, the footage was sent to authorities. The illegal operation was confirmed. The land was marked for urgent rehabilitation, and as promised, Samir filed no incident report about the lions. When asked how the rangers discovered the camp, he simply replied, "A young girl led us there, with a little help." But the truth, raw, powerful, and beyond explanation, belonged only to those who had seen it with their own eyes. The sun was dipping low by the time the rangers returned to the base. The sky had shifted to a quiet orange hue, brushing the trees, with a gentle light that felt both heavy and forgiving. Dust still clung to their boots. No one spoke much as they filed into the station, each person carrying the weight of what they had just witnessed. And yet, in the silence, there was a strange sense of peace. Asha sat on the bench outside the infirmary, her tiny legs swinging over the edge, the red string pouch still in her hands. Samir stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her quietly. Not like a ranger watching a civilian, but like a brother watching someone braver than he could ever be. News had already started traveling fast. The footage Anita captured, of machinery ripping through sacred land, of displaced families hiding among the trees, and most of all, of the lions, was sent to regional wildlife authorities, local government, and even a few trusted journalists. Asha didn't seem concerned with any of it. She stared up at the treetops, humming a soft tune no one else could quite recognize. When Samir finally asked what it was, she shrugged and said it was something the lions used to fall asleep to, back when she would talk to them through the fence as a little girl. Hours passed. Calls came in from wildlife NGOs. Investigations were launched. The mining site would be shut down permanently, with plans to rehabilitate the land. But none of those updates seemed to matter to Asha. She only wanted to know if Jaro and the others were safe. And that answer, Samir couldn't yet give her. The next morning, the team returned to the clearing with backup and wildlife officials. The makeshift camp had been stripped clean. Tents were abandoned. Machines stood motionless. The creek, once poisoned by barrels and runoff, was already showing signs of recovery. Small frogs and insects returned, and birds perched overhead like cautious sentinels. But the lions were gone. No paw prints, no sounds, just silence and the wind. Asha didn't cry. She simply placed her red string pouch on a rock near the creek's edge. When Samir asked what was inside, she smiled softly and whispered, "Everything they once gave me, I gave it back." Weeks passed. Rangers resumed patrols, though they tread differently now. They moved through the forest with more reverence. They avoided certain areas they once cleared, and every now and then, when the breeze picked up or the brush shifted a little too perfectly, someone would stop and look around, half expecting a golden mane or amber eyes to emerge from the trees. One evening, just as the last patrol returned to the station, a strange sight met them at the gates. Asha stood near the ranger watchtower, her hands shielding her eyes as she stared toward the horizon. Anita, curious, followed her gaze and froze. Across the field, in the twilight haze, 5 lions stood lined in the distance, not threatening, not charging, just watching. Among them, Jaro stood tallest, his breath heavy, his mane fluttering in the breeze. He looked straight at Asha. She didn't run to them. She didn't call out. Instead, she knelt down slowly, placed her hand on the earth and simply whispered, "Thank you." And just like that, the lions turned and melted into the tall grass, shadows returning to their kingdom. The video went viral, but not because of the rogue lions or the illegal mining bust. It was the image of a small girl, hand pressed to the earth, facing a pride of lions who had once been feared and misunderstood, that captivated the world. People didn't just see animals. They saw guardians. They saw memory. They saw something ancient and sacred, and somehow still deeply human. Years later, the land once scarred by machines was transformed into a protected wildlife corridor. No mining, no interference, just trees, grass, and open sky. Locals began calling it the Guardian Path, named after the silent protectors who once risked everything to defend it. Asha never forgot them. She visited the edge of the corridor each year on the same date, sometimes leaving fruit, sometimes flowers, sometimes nothing at all. On one such visit, now older, she was asked by a journalist if she truly believed the lions had remembered her after all that time. Her reply was simple. They didn't just remember me. They reminded me who I was. That was the gift the lions gave her. Not just survival or safety, but identity. In a world that constantly told her to be smaller, to forget the forest and grow up, the lions reminded her of something else. That there is power in remembering where you came from. That sometimes the fiercest protectors wear fur instead of armor. That miracles are not always loud. Sometimes they come on 4 paws, wrapped in silence and trust. And in that truth, there was something more powerful than fear. There was love, there was legacy, there was beauty.